Hello everyone and welcome! In this tutorial we are going to sew a tulle skirt for a little girl. It's going to be very big and full, a little bit rock and streetwear if you will, and because it has no lining you can sew it very quickly even if you are a beginner. It can be worn as a top layer skirt with shorts beneath it or leggings, which is perfect for little girls who love running outside, climbing trees and go on adventures all day long. For this tutorial I have decided to use this amazing tulle. It's colorful and shiny and fun, plus it has glitters. And to make the belt I picked this really simple bias fabric. 3 or 4 meters of tulle and 3 meters of bias are enough to make this project. Then, if you wish, you can always add decorations like charms, pearls, lace, and so on. So let's start with the pattern. It is really simple. It's just a very long rectangle, a very long stripe of tulle that we are going to gather to create the base layer of the skirt. The width of this stripe corresponds to the length that you wish for your final skirt, plus about 1.5 centimeters for your sewing allowance. The length of this stripe corresponds to how much fabric you need to obtain your waist size once gathered. Usually when we buy tulle, the width of the fabric roll is about 140 to 160 centimeters, and we are going to keep all of it for the length of our stripe. Now that we have the length, I'm going to measure and mark the width of my stripe. Remember, it is the final length of the skirt plus 1.5 centimeters of sewing allowance. Then you can cut your stripe. Be careful not to cut your pins. And because we have our scissors in our hands, let's cut 3 additional stripes of tulle. If you wish to create a very big and very poofy skirt, you can even cut more stripes. We are going to gather our first stripe, starting with a few securing stitches. Now, to gather fabric, there are a lot of different methods. Today I have decided to show you a way that might not be very academic, but it is quick and efficient for beginners. This technique does not require any additional explanation than what you can see on the screen. You just have to gather the tulle with your hands right before it goes under the presser foot of your sewing machine. The length of my stitch is slightly longer than usual. I have set it to 3 or 3.5, which is good as well. Once we have gathered enough tulle and we have obtained our waist size, we can make a few securing stitches and cut our stripe. If you don't have enough length, you can just add the second stripe following the first one until you get the right measurement. Both stripes will overlap on about 4 to 5 centimeters, and then we keep on gathering our fabric just like we did before. Now that I have the right size measurement, I can make a securing stitch to secure my gathers in place. I double check if my waist size is correct, flat at the table, which is easier, and I cut the excess fabric. It is time to add some peps, some volume, some fantasy to the skirt. Remember, we have cut several stripes of tulle fabric. It is time to use them. We are going to have a little bit of fun by cutting out a lot of fabric scraps. They can be squares or rectangles. Actually, you can try out many different shapes, and then we can gather them just like that. When it is done, we are going to place them on top of the underskirt and pin them at regular distances. The more you add, the fuller and bigger your tutu skirt will be. Then we are going to stitch everything in place with a straight stitch. We follow the first seam as a guide, which means that we stitch on top of it without forgetting to make securing stitches at the beginning and the end. I promised you a quick and easy project today, something special for parents in a rush, and because I can see the time passing by quickly, let's move on to adding a belt. First, we need to cut the excess fabric there, and then we can prepare our bias, or any kind of ribbon you might have at home today to make the belt. My tulle is full of colors, therefore I have decided to use a block-colored bias to create a nice contrast. First, I measure about 30 centimeters, 32 for me today to be precise. I place a mark with a pin and then I go on measuring the waist size. It's 55 centimeters for my little Mia. I add a new mark there with a pin and then I measure again about 30 centimeters before cutting my bias. The 30-ish centimeters on each side of the waist measurement will allow us to tie up the skirt around the waist and make a cute little bow. Oh, and before I forget, we will also need a second piece of bias with the same length. Now we are going to place the bias on the skirt. I align it with the waist seam and I pin it. Take your time, your waistband should be very nicely placed if you want a really nice looking finished project. So you want to make everything nice and neat. I decided to leave the gathers here on the sewing allowance side because I like the look of it. So they will go beyond the belt, but feel free to cut them short if you prefer, of course. When it is done, we are going to turn our skirt on the wrong side and pin the second piece of bias in place. If you wish to add a lining to your skirt, do it right now before pinning the second bias. For my own skirt today, I have decided to go without lining since I imagine it would be sort of like a costume, a little fancy extra something that a little girl would put on quickly on top of shorts or leggings before running to the trampoline and having fun with her friends. So no lining for little Mia today. Of course, we're going to hide the edges inside as we sew the bias together, and that's actually what we're going to do right now. We are on the right side of the fabric again, and we're going to stitch our bias at about 1 or 2 millimeters from the edge, making sure to stitch in every single layer of fabric at a time. Both bias pieces should be properly aligned, one on top of the other, on each side of the tulle fabric, of course. I am going to have to put the music down for a minute because we're not done yet and because this is not a Jane Austen movie, right, Romy? But we are almost there, I promise. We just have to fold all of these covers wrong sides together, which will create the skirt. Now we can place one edge of the foundation layer on top of the other. They overlap on about 1 or 1.5 centimeters, and we can make a quick row of straight stitches, making sure to leave, that is really important, about 7 or 8 centimeters at the top to be able to put the skirt on, of course. Now you can make a quick straight stitch with a machine, or if you are just like me, a bit of a control freak, I mean a perfectionist, you can make a few invisible stitches by hand with an invisible thread. Voila, dear friends, this is the end of this tutorial. Are you going to sew your own skirt? Let me know in the comments what you think about this tutorial. I truly enjoy reading your messages. Bye bye! À bientôt!